I went into this movie not realizing how much of a comedy it actually was. That is not to say that once I realized that it was comedic, that it detracted from my enjoyment of this film. I thought that Hell of a Summer was a pretty fun time, simple slasher flick, also a movie that pays homage to slasher flicks from the 80s, especially camp slasher flicks. And I didn't realize until after it was over that Finn Wolfhard, dude from Stranger Things, he was actually one of the directors. This was directed by two people, him and then another guy who played a character in here. And also, I know that Finn was involved in the writing, and I don't remember if the director was as well. But anyway, it was just kind of like this fun little group effort on their part. And it was a movie that was actually filmed back in 2022, I think. Maybe was supposed to come out in 23 or something like that. The COVID stuff screwed up the schedule and everything. So we're finally getting it now in 2025. The basic premise is that, there's a killer at the camp. It's very simple. This film seemed to be pretty self-aware, I felt like. And that was one thing that made me go with the comedy a little bit more than I might have been able to otherwise. We're introduced to a kill that happens in the very beginning, and then the story progresses from there, and the people arrive at the camp. This is something that takes place before any campers actually arrive. It's the counselors. When I say campers, no, it's like a camp for kids, but this is a horror story that is revolving around the counselors. The counselors are getting killed off one by one. You are introduced to the characters. You find out about their little idiosyncrasies and all these different things going on with them and the different personal connections and the dynamics in their relationship. And they start to get killed off. And then, of course, the reveal happens as to the killer and what the motivations were and all of that. It's only about an hour and a half. I did not stay behind to see if there was a thing at the end. I believe I looked it up to find out and didn't see any information. So if there's a post-credit scene, I don't know about that. Sorry. There were different things that I liked about this film. I had more likes than dislikes. There really weren't a ton of dislikes because it's just a simple slasher film and there's comedy to it. And like I said, it's self-aware. One of the characters in here, his name was Jason, which I thought was funny. That's an example of being self-aware. Okay. They knew what the hell they were doing when they named this character Jason. So I thought that was kind of funny. If I had any complaints about the film, and there are some things that stood out to me as far as being an issue in like the continuity or writing that sometimes didn't make sense with some of the characters. I'll give you an example. The counselors know at a particular point in time, they all become aware of what's going on. So why in the heck would any of them consider going off alone to search for something? Obviously it's to open up the pathway for the killer to kill them, but still, it is like, why would you do that? I just no, just y'all stay together no matter what. Anyway, okay. And the motivations of the killer when revealed, they felt a little bit flimsy, a little lame, so I don't feel like that had much depth. Obviously, it didn't have depth to it because there's not much real depth in this movie. But what I mean is the motivation was more eyeball rolling than anything. However, I'm going to add the caveat that it is entirely possible. In fact, it probably is possible that was intentional for the motivation to be just completely ridiculous because this movie is so self-aware. That's my take. So it might be a little unfair to call this a con. Some of the kills that happened, I wrote down some of the kills dumb. And to be honest with you, right now, off the top of my head, I can't think of what specific kill, but I feel like some of the kill lead ups or setups were kind of lame. Again, maybe just part of the whole self-aware thing. or maybe just some weak writing. There is a scene where all of this stuff is going down. Everybody knows there's a killer going on, and two characters go off to this place where there's like it's got a stage. It's like the playhouse, you know, where you go and perform and everything. They're not going there to like mess around or anything like that. There's not that tropey, this part. But why are they going off by themselves in this place where they know or think that a killer is running around? So it was like, you know, again, those sorts of setups, they frustrate me. But again, I'm coming right back to the thought that this stupidity could be completely intentional. So again, take all of what I'm saying with a grain of salt. It is very, very possible that this was done specifically to make fun of or pay homage to the silly scenarios and kill setups of camp slasher movies. You know, now that I'm thinking about it more, I'm like, oh, is it really fair to complain about these things? And probably all of my complaints can tie back to that rationale. There's a scene where a group of them go off together to see if a phone works. They quickly determine that the phone does not work, and instead of just leaving and going back to be with the other people, they proceed to go into another room. Of course, this action leads to the reveal of a body or part of a body. So, you know, obviously for purposes of the story, it had to happen so that they would know this thing, but it made no sense that they would do that, because if they know there's a killer, they would be getting back to the rest of the crowd ASAP. But again, could be completely intentional. So I'm starting to doubt my cons because I'm like, you know what? It's very possible they did this on purpose. You know they did. Okay, sorry. That's a quote from my cousin. It's a family thing. I thought it was enjoyable-ish. Is it the best horror movie I've ever seen? Absolutely not. Was it fun? Heck yes, it was fun. I appreciated moments of red herring stuff that happened. I thought that was done pretty well. You know, I enjoyed it. It's not going to be something that I'm going to rate like 4 out of 5. I'm probably going to rate it 3.25 or something out of 5. You know, it's definitely not going to be anything that falls in the rotten category for me. I did see that critics and the audience aren't super in love with this thing. Last time I saw, they were pretty much like both were negative. Let me check. Yeah, it looks like audience and critics are pretty close. They're only off by about 6 points. Like the official critics have given it 48%. I feel like that's a skosh harsh. And the regular audience has given it 54%. I would not rate it as low as 54%. I would rate it at least 60% or between 60 and 65%. I thought it was that enjoyable. Does it rise to the level of a movie like Halloween? No, because Halloween took itself seriously. This film does not take itself seriously. It's almost like a parody, but a parody done with respect to the genre, kind of making fun of it, but with love, if that makes any sense. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it enough that I decided to do a full-on review about it. Initially, I was just going to do, you know, like a quick take review, audio review. But the more I thought about this film, the more I realized, yeah, that was enjoyable enough. And I want to talk about it with you guys. So this is me talking about Hell of a Summer. That's about all I have to say about it, though. If you guys take the time to check it out, I'm curious to see if you landed in the same mental space as I did about the intentionality of some of the writing that seemed to me sloppy at first, but upon reflection, maybe not so much. Okay, you guys, that's all I have for this one. Adios.